And thank you. And I'm Kelly Kearns. I am the co-lead of the monthly meeting team, and I'm happy to welcome you here tonight. Let me introduce the rest of our monthly meeting team. So Christina Cook and Susan Nossel are providing Zoom expertise behind the scenes, and Julia Isaacs will be joining me in moderating. So we have the we have the recording on, and we are ready to go. We have an opening question for everyone that we would like you to put in the chat. What inspired you to join 350 Wisconsin? And what inspires you to keep working with us together for the climate? And if you're new, please let us know that it's your first meeting and where you're zooming in from. So are people seeing a number of things, how people were recruited to work on green buildings, new people from Wausau. Love the fact that we have people coming from all around the state. That's great. Somebody joined way back in 2012. That's wonderful. It's been a while. Ooh, somebody's talking about the Canadian wildfires. Yes, clearly a climate issue. So all you new folks, we would love it if you would stay with us after the meeting is over, and Nikki Darga, our volunteer coordinator, will be talking with you, and she can fill you in a little bit more on how things work here. Looks like we have a few more people joining us, so keep on putting your inspirations into the chat, how you were inspired to join 350 and what inspires you to keep going with us. Looks like there's people coming in from a number of places in the state. Love to see that. Somebody was referred by their solar installer to join 350. That's great. Somebody here from Rhinelander. I think a lot of people like Chelsea, this is their number one concern on the planet right now. So I'm glad you've found us. This is a good group to be with if climate change is your number one concern. Okay, thank you all for joining us. We still have a few more people, and we'll keep letting them in as we move on for the night.
Thank you, Kelly, for welcoming everyone. Before we proceed with our exciting program, which is bringing us, we may have a record number of people tonight in recent months, we'll see. I ask that we take 2 deep breaths together to reflect on our ties to this land we live on. And I usually share a photo of from nature. But when I was looking at my photos from the Sienna Retreat Center and some beautiful photos of nature, I was caught by this photo of a poster on the wall. The wolf is 30 million years old. The whale is 50 million years old. The loon is 160 million years old. Can we not learn from our elders? So 2 breaths together. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. And I want to acknowledge the land I am on is the land of the Ho-Chunk people. One thing I have learned from listening to Ho-Chunk people is that they have a greater capacity than many white settlers of seeing the 4-legged creatures as their relatives, and the creatures of the sky and the creatures of their water. Can we learn from our relatives, many of whom are our elders? Next slide, Christina. So it's a very simple meeting tonight. We've done our opening chat, our land acknowledgement. We are continuing to welcome you, both the newcomers and familiar faces. So glad that you're all here. Our primary goal tonight is to learn more about some dangerous proposals by the utility companies that would darken the outlook for rooftop solar. And we have two great speakers on that topic. Following that, we will hear some updates from our various teams. We do look forward to a public meeting that is welcoming and supportive for all people, regardless of background or identity. And we offer a special welcome to newcomers. As Kelly mentioned, at the end of our plenary time together, we will have time for the newcomers to meet with Nikki Darga. And we'll also, at the end of our time together, have a special Q&A if we don't answer all the questions for the speakers during the main meeting, which is what usually happens. I now would like to turn it over to Stephanie Robinson, who is currently 350 Wisconsin's Development Director, but as of September will be our co-executive director. Stephanie has played a big role in bringing our speakers to us tonight, and we'll introduce them.
Hi, everyone. It is really terrific to see such a phenomenal turnout tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. Some of you attended our June annual meeting and heard a little bit about these utility proposals and 350 Wisconsin's engagement on these issues. But tonight you're going to hear quite a bit more. And we are so fortunate to be joined tonight by two experts in the field of renewable energy and great friends to 350 Wisconsin. We're also going to share with you a little bit about 350 Wisconsin's planned activities and how you can get involved. Are we going to share the slides with the speaker bios next, please? Thanks so much. So first up tonight will be Heather Allen. She is the Associate Policy Director at Elevate. And since first discovering her passion for renewables upon going solar, Heather has dedicated herself to finding policy and program solutions to ensure all Wisconsinites have access to clean energy. Heather joined Elevate in June 2023, and in her current position, she works to maximize the climate and equity benefits of deploying clean energy and energy efficiency. From 2018 to 2023, Heather served in a variety of capacities at Renew Wisconsin, a nonprofit dedicated to accelerating the transformation to clean energy. As Executive Director of Renew, she guided overall strategy, policy development, day-to-day operations, and engagement. And prior to joining Renew, Heather worked as a legislative analyst for the City of Madison's Common Council and brings a cumulative 15 years of experience developing policies and programs at the Clean Lakes Alliance, NRDC, NOAA, and the City of Madison. Next one, please. Our second speaker tonight will be Michael Vickerman, Clean Energy Deployment Manager for Renew Wisconsin, a nonprofit founded in 1991 to promote clean energy development and use in Wisconsin. Renew designs policies and programs for promoting solar, wind, local hydro, heat pumps, energy storage, and electric vehicles to power Wisconsin's energy future. Michael has held several leadership positions with Renew since 1991, including 18 years as Executive Director and 10 years as Policy Director. In his current position, Michael advances the interests of renewable energy producers, businesses, and customers in the policy arena through expert testimony and other regulatory filings, media interviews, presentations, and commentaries. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Heather, who is going to share her screen with us.
Heather, make sure you unmute. And we're seeing the presentation view, not the actual slides.
Okay, thank you. How's that? We're still in the same view?
It's
funny.
not sharing anything right now.
Okay, sorry, that was working about a minute ago. Okay. How's that?
Looks great.
Okay. All right, so many options. Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see familiar faces and names and meet new people. So many inspiring reasons to be part of 350. I'm very honored to be here. Thanks for the generous introduction, Stephanie, and I'm excited to be presenting in advance of my colleague, Michael Vickerman. As Stephanie said, my name is Heather Allen, and I work for Elevate. Elevate's a nonprofit based in Chicago. We've been around for around 20 years, and primarily we focus on advancing climate action through work on equity. And what that means in practice is a lot of retrofits for affordable housing, including areas of lead water line replacement and energy efficiency, and moving more and more into clean energy spaces. So what we're going to talk about today is how net metering is really important to make a lot of these projects feasible and possible going forward. So at Elevate, we work to meet building owners where they are. So we combine projects that bring together energy efficiency, electrification, adding solar on those rooftops, and managing energy loads to help bring energy bills down, especially for affordable housing and community organizations that are going to address their energy bills with these tools. Altogether, in the last 20 years, we've helped over 100,000 units of affordable housing become more energy efficient and save money on their electric bills. And just to think real big picture, why is this important from an equity perspective? There's a number of reasons that good net metering, solid net metering policy is important to advance solar and to protect equity or to advance equity. And that includes customers, families being able to control their own energy bills, the ability to electrify buildings and transportation, the ability to deploy solar on multifamily properties, to promote solar jobs, those solar installer jobs that actually really help reinvest consistently in our community, reduce the total cost to the grid, and increase community resilience and reliability. And of course, one of the reasons we're all here today, to reduce greenhouse gases. You may have seen this slide before. This is actually research that 350 Wisconsin put together last year on low income energy burden in Madison. And since you wrote this report, I won't go into too much detail. 350 Wisconsin wrote this report, but the message here is that there actually are a number of residents in Madison who are energy burdened, and the rate cases that we're discussing today actually propose significant energy cost increases while making solar an option that helps you reduce your energy bill less accessible, less predictable, and less financially advantageous for customers. So one of the tools that makes it that can be utilized to help low-income customers is actually being going to become less available, even though there's plenty of people who need that support. So net metering is really important because it's this really important rock solid policy tool that Michael will go into in a lot more detail. But one of the reasons it's important is because net metering as a tool helps get solar on rooftops. I can't say it any more simply than that, but recently the Public Service Commission commissioned a study, and they found that Wisconsin has the potential to install up to 2.5 gigawatts of solar. That would be an order of magnitude more solar than we have today in Wisconsin. and that would be just on rooftops. But what we need to get there is solid net metering policy. In the case of this report, they said a statewide uniform net metering policy. And unfortunately, the proposals before us today move us backwards. This is a chart from that report that just shows that the most powerful tool we have to get solar on rooftops in Wisconsin is a statewide net metering policy. This is a report commissioned by the Public Service Commission. So this green bar shows that statewide net metering policy, how fast rooftop solar would grow. That is more powerful than even increasing the rebates from Focus on Energy or increasing and extending the federal income tax credit. Thank goodness the income tax credit was extended, but this is still more important than that to really deliver solar across Wisconsin. What we've learned at Elevate by by electrifying buildings, making them more energy efficient, putting solar on rooftops is that what undergirds all of that is the ability to have predictable financing and payback rates for solar so that customers can invest, and even nonprofits or other entities that are going to make a commitment can invest. So underlying all of this great work, electrification and decarbonization, dealing with energy bills and getting solar and affordable housing, we really need a baseline strong solar net metering policy. This is just a fun report. I want folks to be able to look at on their own time. Local Solar for All is a roadmap that did some new sophisticated modeling that actually finds that if we advanced more local solar and storage, we would actually have a more affordable grid. We would have 2 million more jobs and 223 gigawatts of new solar by 2050. So I have the link, or I have the reference here in the chat. If you're interested in learning more about why local solar is actually an affordable option for the entire grid, not just the people who go solar, that's a place to learn more about that. And that's it. I'm just going to tee that up for Michael Vickerman so he can go into more details about these proposals. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to me, that's my contact info.
Thanks so much, Heather. Michael, go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
Okay, we'll try. All right, you got it?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Very good. Hey, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for taking the time in a beautiful summer evening to learn a little bit more about solar net metering and why its preservation is so important. I want to thank 350 Wisconsin for inviting Heather and I to speak. And also it's a privilege to follow Heather here. And so unfortunately, it seems every once in a while utilities have to act up and try for some kind of, if not a Hail Mary, just a out of left field kind of initiative to change things up for what they consider to be an improvement to their bottom line. And that's what brings us here. So I've on this slide, there's a image of the Blount Street plant, which is still operating. It's burning gas, not coal, but it's still operating. And an example of rooftop solar here in Madison, that's the Habitat for Humanity Dane County office. And it's one of it's a recipient of a Solar for Good grant, which is a program that Renew Wisconsin operates, in which we connect local nonprofits, actually statewide nonprofits, to a philanthropist who has put most of his holdings into a foundation to support rooftop solar. So he's very much interested in the fate of rooftop solar going forward. So today we're going to cover the how to value rooftop solar, the case for net metering, what is the threat from both MG&E and Alliant? Although I'm going to spend much more time on the MG&E proposal than the Alliant proposal, because it is so much more clear cut. Feel free to ask questions about the Alliant proposal after the presentation is over, but I want to make sure that you have at least a clear understanding, at least what I consider to be the larger of the two threats, and that's MG&E. And then finally, I'll touch upon the rate cases where these matters will be decided and hopefully in our favor. So somebody in the chat asked, what is net metering? Well, here is your answer. So the important thing here is, you are a customer generating electricity. Sometimes you will export that electricity. Net metering allows that electricity to be valued at either the retail rate or some metric tied to the retail rate for any electricity exported. So this is a very easy to understand a billing mechanism. It has the effect of encouraging businesses and homeowners and other building owners to invest in solar because they have a pretty clear idea of how it works. Wisconsin's history with net metering is rather unique in that it is entirely defined by regulatory action. In most states, legislatures put boundaries around net metering and address some very important details about how it operates. That didn't happen in Wisconsin. The Public Service Commission, which regulates electric utilities in the state down to very small municipal utilities, established net metering in an order point 40 years ago. And one of the first things I was involved with at Renew was Advanced Plan 6, where the commission ruled that all regulated utilities had to offer net metering at up to 20 kilowatts. However, because of this, the way net metering originated and unfolded, there's a great deal of divergence with individual utility net metering services. We'll get into that, but suffice it to say that you move from one utility territory to another, the terms change. And so we refer to the net metering or this rooftop solar landscape as a patchwork quilt. So here's just a little diagram that perhaps might make the concept easier to digest. The first three images are pretty easy to understand, but what number 4 here refers to a specific kind of electric meter that moves, that measures the flow of electricity in both directions, intake and outflow. And this meter allows your electric output, if it's exported to the grid, to be valued either at the retail energy rate or some metric that's related, that is tied to it. So the setup really could not be simpler. The rooftop solar market has in recent years thrived as a result of the simplicity of this arrangement. All right, so we have to come to terms with the solar resource proper, especially as it strikes your rooftop. Solar is it varies significantly by the season. Of course, we know that the difference between the midday resource and the midnight resource, and so it starts up in the morning, rises sharply up till about noon, and then starts to slope away. And so what you see there in red is the consumption. And people really don't have a great understanding of how they affect the grid when they turn on their appliances, but it's an awfully spiky sort of impact. So what you see there are maybe a whole lot of trips to to use the microwave oven that might account for the spikes, or operating the vacuum cleaner. And then there might be turning on the dishwasher. Doesn't look like air conditioning was a feature here, or maybe if it was that sharp spike around 10 a.m. But that's really how the grid sees one household's usage. So solar is generating electricity. You can see how much of the solar here. This is probably this is a September image, but a lot of the electricity is actually flowing directly into the grid. It's not being much of it is not being consumed. We'll come back to this image later. But when we talk about the conflict with net metering, we are talking about the exported energy, not the energy that merely offsets grid usage. That's not at issue here. So the offset is whatever the retail rate is, which in Wisconsin ranges from about 13 cents to 17 cents a kilowatt hour. MG&E's retail rate is above 16.5 cents a kilowatt hour, and their proposals for increasing residential rates will take them above 17 cents by 2025. And under net metering, the exported electricity is compensated at the same rate, from 13 to 17 cents. Now, if the household exceeds consumption within a billing period, usually a month, then whatever is produced in excess of one's consumption is credited at a much lower rate, 3 to 6 cents. So there's a little bit of an art to sizing a solar electric system. It's perhaps easier with businesses that have a more constant load, but in residential situations, you basically run the gamut of spiky loads to fairly steady loads, depending on if the person stays in that dwelling for much of the day. So so there's a big difference between the retail rate and the wholesale rate, which is what this slide's about. I just want to point out that before I mentioned that we have a patchwork quilt of service terms. In MG&E territory, you can net meter a solar electric system up to 100 kilowatts. And also that you can go over that amount and still be credited at the retail rate, so long as your 12-month output does not exceed your 12-month consumption. That's the rolling 12-month netting period. So that's a pretty nice arrangement right now. It's perhaps the best in the state. And MG&E will be the first to tell you that's too generous. So over at Alliant territory, if you go down to southwestern Madison or cross over to Cottage Grove, the limit's only 20 kilowatts, and the monthly bill basically fulfills the netting process. So whatever you produce over what you consume during that month, that gets credited at that 3 to 6 cent rate. So I mention this because in MG&E territory, you can have high schools, for example, that are net metered. This is Madison West High School, and this is a 100 kilowatt system. And net metering makes it possible for a school that doesn't have as much consumption in the summer to still put up a fairly large system, because it can that excess output would be taken up by consumption at other months of the year. So this works out great for schools. It works out great for healthcare clinics, lots of businesses. apartment buildings that have a lot of air conditioning running through the house meter, even car washes. So that's a very attractive aspect of net metering. Now, this slide is like the perfect experiment that shows you the power of net metering. So you have two different facilities. These are healthcare clinics operated by Wildwood Family Clinic. Both of these clinics are on Cottage Grove Road. They're about the same size. They have the same operating hours. And yet, the one in Madison has a 50 kilowatt system, and the one in Cottage Grove only has a 20 kilowatt system. Why the differently sized systems? It all comes down to the thresholds. MG&E allows up to 100 kilowatts. So you'll notice that in the business hours, Saturday and Sunday is closed. That's not a problem with MG for a building in MG&E territory because the netting threshold is higher. But in Cottage Grove, that would be a problem if they went to a 50 kilowatt system. So they had to downsize it to 20 kilowatts in order to stay below the threshold of allowable systems under Alliance net metering service. These buildings are only 7 miles apart, but there's a utility service boundary that runs right in between them. And you can see, I mean, you couldn't draw this comparison up any tighter if even in a laboratory, it's that good. So you can see the power of net metering there. So let's talk about why utilities detest net metering. Some of these are actually pretty obvious, but some of these factors may be a little bit more, it takes a little more thinking to arrive at that. So reduces revenue flows to utilities. That's fairly obvious. And the exported electricity is compensated at the retail energy rate. So as far as the utility is concerned, they're spending a lot more money on the buyback than they would if they procured the same amount of electricity from wholesale markets. But bullet point number 3 is also important. It's the customer that's investing in the equipment. So there's no opportunity for the utility to earn a profit. They're just kind of shut out of the whole transaction. And last, and this is also important, customer generation lessons need to upgrade the electric system, the poles and wires where there is growth, but if there's a fair amount of behind the meter electric generation, the utility actually doesn't need to upgrade that particular area of the distribution system or add a generator. And so that's a profit making opportunity that's deferred as a result of net metering. So the utilities are no great fans of net metering, and they've been spoiling to get rid of net metering or cut it down to size for years and years. So how do these two utilities intend to change their rooftop solar service? What they propose to do is to basically detach the export rate from the retail energy rate, and they're going to substitute a new compensation formula that lowers it. So in effect, the offset rate will be very different, or potentially very different, from the offset rate. And so when this happens, this is no longer net metering. You can call it, they may try to call it net metering, but we have a different name for it. Where this is practiced in other states is generally known as inflow outflow. And the inflow rate is substantially different from the outflow rate. So there have been a couple of articles that came out in the last week about both the MG&E and Alliant net metering services. And there was a really good quote in one of them. So this quote came out, this article came out last week. And right now, if you were to export electricity in Alliance territory, you've gone above the monthly consumption, and you're now being credited at the wholesale rate. Well, the current wholesale rate is actually 7.1 cents, but that was a reflection of unusually, anomalously high natural gas prices that prevailed in 2022. Those gas prices have retreated substantially this year. Last year, there were about gas was about $7 to $8 per million BTU. Today, it's about 2.5 cents per million BTU. So that's almost a 2/3 difference. And so, because gas is basically the marginal source of energy that determines wholesale electric prices, when it retreats and subsides to such a significant way, you're going to see a much lower buyback rate. And so we're looking at 4.5 cents. But the thing about the key difference between the MG&E and the Alliant proposal is that Alliant's going to substitute some sort of system adder credit on top of the avoided energy rate of 4.6 cents. So it might come to 9 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour. With MG&E, because basically they intend to scuttle net metering, all you would get is 4.6 cents, and that brings into the discussion another insidious aspect of the MG&E proposal, which is they intend to track inflow and outflow instantaneously. So the moment a household moves from drawing in grid supplied power to exporting power, that output shifts. And so we're back to this slide again. And the green there represents 4.6 cents a kilowatt hour. And as I mentioned before, household loads are spiky, and it's a little hard to figure out what you're doing. It's difficult to predict the percentage of outflow to inflow. You really don't know how much of the generation at your house is actually going out in the grid. You can try to downsize your system, but that only diminishes its output, and it actually raises the per kilowatt cost of the system. So you don't really want to do that so much. Basically, this arrangement forces people to run their appliances during the solar window, so like from 10 to 2, so that they can capture as much of the value of that solar resource through the offset retail rate as possible. I would argue that's a rather perverse incentive to run the dishwasher at noon, or to charge your car at 2 o'clock. But this is what might come about, likely to come about, when you combine both an inflow-outflow rate with instantaneous netting. So who would be disadvantaged by what MG&E is proposing? Well, entities with irregular schedules. Think about a church or any kind of house of worship. Their big day is Sunday or sometimes Saturday, and the other days of the week, there's not much usage there. So if they have a 20 kilowatt system on their rooftop, much of that electricity is going straight to the grid, and under instantaneous netting, it would be credited at 4.5 cents. Customers who can't afford to go solar without financing. Well, I have talked to one lending institution that works that concentrates on providing financing for solar installations, and they're rather alarmed by this proposal because they they lose the reassurance of a predictable supply or a predictable revenue flow that comes with that investment. They just don't know how much of that electricity will be credited at the wholesale rate versus the retail rate. Small households with low consumption would be disadvantaged. So would workspaces operating on weekdays only, like the Wildwood family clinics I showed you, where on weekends the clinics are closed, and so net metering would work. Oh, it's me. Inflow outflow definitely doesn't work for them. And then there are the school districts, the local governments, and other entities that have substantial carbon reduction goals. And they're looking to put more rooftop solar on their buildings. City of Madison is a prime example. And if they're looking at a solar system under 100 kilowatts, they would be subject. They would lose the certainty of the return on whatever investment that they're considering. And last, and certainly not least, solar contractors and their workforce. This is going to have a depressing effect on demand for solar going forward. If you don't know what how long it'll take to have your system pay back, whether it's 10 years, 13 years, 20 years, it's just going to diminish the appetite for rooftop solar going forward. And that will have an effect on local contractors. We have several in Madison, and they supply both households in MG&E and Alliant territory. So is this a fair rate? I'm going to move forward quickly, but I would argue this is completely unfair, because if you're a shared solar subscriber, you're paying 10.9 cents for solar that MG&E provides to you through an offsite array. So why should MG&E pay you only 4.6 cents for the same electricity? Of course, you know, there's they would tell you, well, we don't own the system. There are a lot of expenses avoided by local generations. For example, the transmission, moving electricity from an MG&E owned system in, say, Iowa County or in Manitowoc County, whereas the net metered systems are here in Madison or in Middleton. So this very low outflow rate is intended to slow down the pace of new solar installations. That's the objective being served by it, and to make solar ownership unpalatable. And so on the question of solar and equity, I want to point out one thing that hasn't been talked about, but it's really, really important. MG&E actually has a really good service. It's called shared solar. And under that service, if you can't host a solar system on your roof for whatever reason, you can subscribe up to 50% of your electricity consumption through this program. And the rate is fixed. You know, there's an energy rate, there's an avoided transmission rate, there's a little grid access fee. This was set at 2020 at 10.9 cents. Well, at the time, MG&E's energy rate was maybe 9.8 cents. Today, it's at 11.1 cents. So those shared solar subscribers are actually accessing electricity at a lower rate than people on the standard service. The problem, though, is that MG&E has not expanded the program beyond its 2020 solicitation. And so, I mean, if your organization really wants to see solar directly served, at least through the bill, low to moderate income housing or households, I should say, shared solar is the very best way to do so. It actually reaches those customers, whereas a rooftop system wouldn't. And it is entirely equitable because the electric rate is fixed over time. So there's no other pathway out there that can drive new solar projects in such an efficient and equitable manner. So one of the things we're going to argue for in the rate cases is asking the commission to order MG&E to expand its shared solar program. So now we're going to move into the regulatory side, and this is the last phase. Here's a list of interveners. It's a pretty lengthy list. Many of these interveners participated in the 2014 rate case where MG&E proposed to increase its fixed monthly charge to $48 a month and drop energy rates to 7 cents a month. You can imagine what that would have done to energy efficiency and renewables. The city of Madison intervened, so did the city of Middleton, so did Dane County. And they're back into it this time because they have big plans for rooftop solar on their own buildings. And also they want to see a larger uptake of solar within their communities. And we're rounding out the list are these entities, including a new organization called Wisconsin Local Government Addressing Climate Change. So you might want to engage with them in the rate case, even though you're already involved as an intervener. One thing, so this is the schedule that's been agreed upon. Testimony will be filed basically in September, and there'll be party hearings at the end of that month. Unfortunately, we don't have a date yet for a public hearing or a comment period. That should be issued soon. And so with that, our ask to 350 Wisconsin members would be to submit comments opposing the scuttling of net metering in the MG&E case and the re-engineering of net metering in the Alliant case. And I listed a couple of points to raise. Very disruptive. It will disadvantage customer groups who need financing or some sort of additional source of funding to commit to solar. And at the end, also, the utilities have their own decarbonization goals, and MG&E and Alliant are moving forward in that area. But I find it rather difficult to believe that they can amass all the clean energy they need by themselves. I think they're going to need help from their customers. And if that's acknowledged by the Public Service Commission, then there has to be an incentive for the customers to participate in the decarbonization of their respective utility systems. I don't think we can, I think it would be folly to rely on the utilities to go from wherever they are today to 100% and without any sort of collaboration on the part of their customer base. So resource is, we have a landing page. We discuss net metering, and we'll keep apprising everyone out there in Wisconsin, or at least in these two service territories who are interested in how the fight at the PSC is progressing. And thank you very much for your time.
That was great. Thank you so much, Michael and Heather, for those great presentations and elucidating this issue for us. If we could just go to slides 38 and 39 before we jump into the Q&A. Just wanted to do a quick recap on how 350 Wisconsin is getting involved here. So how are we engaging? We are an intervener in both the MG&E and Alliant rate cases, along with the 18 other organizations that Michael listed, including local government, environmental organizations, and others. And we are forming a campaign working group that will have opportunities for further engagement, including a rally and press event coming up. We'll be continuing to uplift the equity issues around these proposals, including the proposed rate increases. We're partnering with other organizations like Elevate and Renew and others. We'll be launching a social media campaign and developing letters to the editor, as well as encouraging our members to submit comments to the PSC. So if you're interested in getting involved, you can email Emily Park. Her email is here, and we'll put that in the chat for you. And then also we did conduct a survey of our members on solar energy, and we would really like to get some more replies to that. So we're going to put that for you in the chat as well. And then if you could just go back to, yes, thank you. So in summary, why are we concerned about these utility proposals? As we just heard, it affects rooftop solar growth while raising rates for working families. It will hurt local businesses and those employed in the solar industry, will make it more difficult for local governments and nonprofits to go solar and achieve their clean energy goals. It will worsen energy burden for low-income families through rate increases, and make it more difficult for low and moderate income families to benefit from rooftop solar. And overall, it will make it more difficult to achieve Wisconsin's climate goals that have been articulated in the governor's clean energy plan and the task force on climate change report. So I think at this point, we want to turn it over or open it up for Q&A. Does that sound right, Julia?
That sounds great.
Okay, and I did also want to thank Heather. She is responding to a lot of questions in the chat. It looks like that's coming from me, just due to a little bit of a glitch, but that's actually Heather that's providing all these great responses to some of your questions in the chat.
Christina, if you can just take down the slides. We'll have a little, we went over a little bit, but let's do a little bit of Q&A, and then we'll do more Q&A during the breakout. If anyone, there were some questions in the chat, but Stephanie, I'm not sure everyone can see the chat. If you want to ask any of those, you think people should.
Sure, we can start there, and then if people have other questions that they'd like to ask verbally, you can, use the reactions to raise your hand. So let's see here. There was a question here that, typically if a utility goes to inflow and outflow as opposed to net metering, but starts with grandfathering existing solar owners, the question is how long before that grandfathering disappears? Heather, you had an answer, I believe, in the chat. Would you like to just respond to that question for everyone?
Sure. And I think Maria actually had more specifics. So Maria, feel free to jump in here. But I believe the Alliant grandfathering period is 4 years. And MG&E said they would do a grandfathering period, but in the initial language, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, they actually didn't specify how long that period would be. And so that's certainly a point of negotiation that has to happen in this rate case process. And I would say, though, in other states, the grandfathering period has been 10, 15, 20 years. So what the utilities are offering here is not consistent with what we see in other states, even when net metering is being reworked and overhauled.
You are correct, Heather. Yeah, so MG&E's grandfathering proposal is indefinite. It's not defined. Alliance is, and the other thing about the Alliant proposal that will matter to a lot of these existing system owners is that they get automatically transferred into a time of use rate. And Alliance time of use rate schedule is exceedingly complicated. And it will undoubtedly adversely affect system payback.
And if I can just say one thing that kind of jumped out at me that Stephanie alluded to in her wrap up is that we've thrown a lot at you tonight. You don't actually have to worry too much unless you're really excited about it and diving into the details, into all the nuances here. But what's important is what's going to happen is solar's become less, like the value of solar becomes less predictable. All of that risk is being shifted away from the utility and onto solar customers and solar installers. So the little guy is taking all the risk in the future if these proposals go forward. And that just means it's going to be harder for more people to go forward with solar. It becomes more expensive and more unpredictable. And we know that markets respond better to predictability and affordability. That's just the simple situation here. These proposals make it, as you can tell, it becomes very complicated, right? So what we're fighting for here is simplicity and affordability for everyone. And that will help grow the solar markets in Wisconsin, which will help us decarbonize, help us deal with energy costs. Without that, our work to decarbonize becomes more difficult.
Thank you, Heather. That's a great summary. Do we have time for some more questions, or do you want to wait for that? Just have people come to the breakout session?
Stephanie, I think we can go another 5 minutes.
Okay. So there was a question about what's the difference between net metering and community solar, and that might just be really helpful to explain. I know, Heather, I think you had an answer in the chat. Would you mind just kind of summarizing that really quickly for us?
Sure. So net metering, this concept of net metering, it's really just it's really a policy about how you get a credit for the energy you push back onto the grid. So and what's important about it is that it's equivalent. Every kilowatt hour I utilize is valued the same as every kilowatt hour I share back with the grid. So it's equivalency, very simple concept. We make it more complicated, but we should try not to. Community solar can sometimes utilize a net metering rate. So that's why it's confusing. So community solar can sometimes pay you back at the same rate that a net metering rate would work if you put it on your rooftop. But it doesn't have to. Community solar is often thought of as a solar project off-site somewhere that you sort of subscribe to, and you get credits for the energy produced for your portion of that solar project, which is and often is net metered, but not always. That's just the structure of that payback rate could be different than net metering. So community solar, you can think of more as a physical solar project that's off-site that you subscribe to through your energy bill. Well, net metering is the policy that governs how much credit you get on your energy bill. I hope I didn't garble that.
Thank you, Heather. That was great. I see Bob Owen, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes. I have a question for Michael. What is the prospect of successfully defending net metering for MG&E in the current rate case?
Good question. I think it's pretty good for a couple of reasons. One is that their proposed buyback rate is so low. I mean, it's going to come down to 4.6 cents because that is the avoided energy and capacity that was assigned to their parallel generation rate. There is no value in that rate to avoided transmission. We do have 3 commissioners appointed by Governor Evers. I think they will be in varying degrees sensitive to the disturbance of customer commitment to solar going forward. I think the question will come down to how well we how many faces we put before the commission that can, in which the commission can register just how deeply, profoundly disruptive it would be. The fact that we have local governments involved in this case, and some new organizations that didn't exist a couple of years ago. That will help. So we just have to, but we can't assume that just because they're Evers appointed commissioners that they're going to be sympathetic to our arguments. So we have to work hard here.
You have one real Democrat and two Republican lights.
Thanks
Yes,
for the answer, Michael. I think we have time for just one other question. So Don, so you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate your presentations. I'm just curious because MG&E and Alliant both have different policies, and I'm not sure what other utilities have in Wisconsin. What do you see as any prospects or something we should advocate for that they do one docket on net metering and decide that there should be a statewide policy?
Well, that's an excellent question, because there already is a docket ongoing where net metering could be addressed in a manner that might result in a more standardized service across the entire state. And we believe we were heading in that direction going into this year. Last year, the commission invited comments from interested parties on how they might approach net metering in the future, and what would be the priorities for those parties that corresponded with the commission. And then they kind of let the matter just unfold without taking any additional action whatsoever. So that will be something that we will raise in the in our testimony to the commission. We'll say, well, but we already were working on this issue in a different context. There's really no pressing reason why we have to tackle this issue on a utility specific basis, and where we have to respond to at least in the case of MG&E, a hostile proposal to the solar industry.
All right, well, thank you everyone for your great questions. If you have some additional questions that you want to ask of our speakers, you can come to our breakout session. Julia, I see one more hand went up, but I know that we're behind schedule here, so I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, hopefully the extra questions can come. I have about 5 minutes or so of action updates, and then we'll turn to our breakout sessions. Our first team update, we have some exciting new staffing news. Next slide, I think Nikki's going to introduce our newest staff person.
Yes, so as many of you know, Stephanie and Emily will be transitioning to being co-EDs while also retaining their previous jobs as well, but that means we need some more help. And so we have hired a development manager. Her name is Kristen Clark. She is here tonight, and I will let her have a few seconds to introduce herself. Kristen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Clark. I'm really excited to be here and to be joining the 350 team and supporting you all in the incredible work that this organization does. Just like a super quick bio about myself, I am from Sparta, Wisconsin, which is in the La Crosse area. If you know Sparta, bicycling capital of America, I'm currently in Madison at UW-Madison, finishing my degrees in political science and environmental studies. But I come to 350 org from previous experience working with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, as well as the Mandela Barnes for Senate campaign. And so I'm really excited to bring those skills and things I've learned there to this organization, and to just work really hard with you all as we're all in this fight together. So really looking forward to getting to speak with you all individually as I get going here in the organization. And that's my quick little welcome and introduction.
Wonderful. Great to meet you, Kristen. Next slide, Diane, I'm going to ask you to invite people to our big event on Saturday.
Oh my. Okay. Hi, I'm Diane Backharsh, co-lead of the Art Collective, along with Russ Bennett. So great to see so many new people here tonight. So we have some street theater and et cetera happening this Saturday at the farmers market, beginning at 10 a.m. It'll go till roughly 11 a.m. And we would love to have support, whether people want to come and leaflet or hold banners or just be smiling faces in the crowd. We try to bring some surprising, entertaining ways to message and get information out about our work. So we would love to have you join us. There is a sign up link there. And also, since we have so many new folks, I think, that have joined tonight, I'd like to put a plug out that the Art Collective is always looking for all kinds of creative types, or even people who think they'd like to be creative. And we're especially looking for singers and musicians and dancers, etc. So we would love to have you. If you're interested, let us know. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. The next slide, I think I'm going to announce. If you are a customer of Chase Bank or Wells Fargo Bank, who are among the largest funders of fossil fuels, you can use your power as a customer to meet with the bank branch manager and advocate for climate justice. Now, it's a little scary meeting with the bank branch manager, and so we have a training to help you do so. And if you're not a customer, but you're the friend of a customer, you could learn how to go with your family member or friend to meet with the bank branch manager. We have a Zoom link, which is in the chat. It's on July 24th. That's in 2 weeks at 7 p.m. right on Zoom. It's brought to you by the Divest and Defund team, and that will be in place of our normal Divest and Defund meeting. And you see a picture of the Divest and Defund team doing actions outside the bank, but this is an opportunity for customers to take their advocacy in a more one-on-one personal meeting with a bank manager. If you have any questions, just you can just chat me. Next slide. Nikki's going to do the next 2 slides. The last.
Yes. All right. So we are once again participating in the Taste of Madison this year. Last year, we did so as well. Essentially what this looks like is we have volunteers who are working in the beer tent or one of the beer tents at Taste of Madison. And because we are volunteering there, we get donations. So we get to keep tips. We get a certain amount just for being there. It's actually a very, very good amount of money for the amount of time that we're putting into it. And it is also a lot of fun. So I highly encourage you, if you would like to and have the availability to attend. It is on September 2nd, and there's 2 different shifts. You can do either one, and there are perks to doing either one. So the first shift afterward, you can go and explore Taste of Madison, right? And in the second shift, there's actually a lot of carts that are getting rid of their food because it's the end of the night. That's how I got a very fun free amount of food last year. So it's a ton of fun. It's a really great time. You get to spend some time with some other volunteers. I highly recommend it. So we have a sign up link in the chat, and yeah, come support us at Taste of Madison. It's a great time. And then our next slide here, I am announcing our volunteer of the month. So our volunteer of the month is Alex. Yay, Alex. I'm hopeful that Alex is here tonight. I believe so. And some things that I want to say about Alex that are super exciting is that she has really stepped up. She is currently the co-lead of the tar sands team. She really stepped up to be a leader when Phyllis Hasbrook, who is also here tonight, retired. And we needed, those are big shoes to fill. And she has been doing a fantastic job in the tar sands team. She not only within the tar sands team, but is also a regular presence at public outreach events. She's tabling, she's engaging with the public. She is part of our climate justice team. She is also active with 350 Wisconsin Action, helping with canvassing and other activities in recent elections, and is a regular attendee at our various social events. So do be sure to say hi if you see her. And does all of that while also having a full-time job. Crazy. So thank you so much, Alex. We really appreciate all of the work that you do and continue and have done for 350 Wisconsin. So everybody, thank you to Alex and all of the work that is being done there. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so next month, we will not be on Zoom. This is probably only meeting in a year where you have to actually drive to Madison to meet us. We're going to be in person. We're going to be meeting an hour early. We're not on Zoom because we'll be eating food. It's a picnic at Brittingham Park. I look forward to, we'll send out an announcement, but I look forward to seeing people, some of you, many of you in person. Next slide. Just want to briefly say that we have lots of teams, as you've heard from, and these teams have upcoming team meetings. And you can, if you want to join one of the teams or find out what it does, you can email the person who's one of the team leads. These are the teams that meet Monday evenings. Next slide, there's lots of teams that meet not on Monday evenings. Diane mentioned the Art Collective. There's a state policy team. Fundraising can always use more people. The monthly meeting planning team, our team can always use more people. And the Community Climate Solutions team. Next slide. So now it's time for breakouts. And I'm sorry, Alex, I need to get your information in the tar sands slide. So if you're a newcomer,